What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Forward Progress. It's Week 18, Best Bets Edition, live here on the Forward Progress YouTube channel, part of the Hammer Betting Network, presented by FanDuel. I'm Rob Pizzola, joined this week by Suma and the returning Hitman. No Judah today. He's busy rerunning his numbers on alt lines or something like that. He's somewhere else. We'll see if he uncovers some hidden gold. But for now, it's the three of us. First off, Happy New Year to everyone watching. 2024 is in the rear view. We're kicking off 2025 with Week 18 action. Unfortunately, last week was not the week that we had hoped for. Hitman was gone. I thought it was going to be a great one. We ended up 1-2. Closing in on you, Hitman, though. A losing pick last week, and you might have been behind me. It was a good week to take off. 1-2 on the show. Suma and Judah got double cucked on the Packers. It's been a lot of double cuckings this year whenever best bets have matched up. Thankfully, I cashed on the Panthers over. That saved us from the clean sweep. This week, we're diving into what Week 18 has to offer. Now, this is a very news-driven slate with playoff implications, resting starters, other late-breaking developments that shape the market. We're going to talk about one right off the top here in 1 second. Our goal is to keep things as forward-looking as possible, give you the tools to navigate what's always been a tricky week in the NFL. And, of course, if you're enjoying the show, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. We're still aiming to hit that AK subs. We'd love to reach that milestone with your support. So hit that subscribe button if you can. Let's get into it. Week 18. We're going to start with the Saturday games. We got two of them. We have the Browns at the Ravens. Ravens are huge favorites, 18.5 points. We got the Bengals at the Steelers. The Bengals laying 1.5 minus 115 on the road. Pretty simple for the Ravens here. They can sew up the division if they beat the Cleveland Browns at home. That's going to make Pittsburgh playing for the 5 seed in the later game against the Bengals. And obviously the Bengals still have an outside shot at the playoffs as well if they end up winning on the road at Pittsburgh. Let's start with that Cincy-Pittsburgh game, Suma. I know you had some initial thoughts on this one. Then we'll go into Cleveland-Baltimore.
I think I can see a clear path where the Bengals offense on its own might be enough to control and seal this game. But I rewatched the first game the other day, and I'm still overly concerned about the matchup of the Bengals at the line of scrimmage, which was a major issue back then. I think the Steelers had 4 sacks and 2 fumbles or something. They also had quite the success blitzing that O-line, and Amarius Mims is dealing with a hand injury still. He was called a game time decision. Orlando Brown revealed that he's playing through like a double broken fibula. Not sure how that is even possible. But that's probably not the greatest situation. Alex Kappa has been a total liability, was also a total liability in the first game. Cam Taylor-Britt popped up with a ankle injury today. Sam Hubbard is still out. The Bengals defense, they look better recently, but they have not really faced those many great offenses. I mean, Will Levis, Dorian Thompson-Robinson last week, Denver, which is also not an elite juggernaut offense. And I think they have not really faced a team that can really attack them like the Steelers did in that first matchup since then. So I would not be surprised if the Bengals have a very, very hard time at the line of scrimmage, and that this might be a favorable matchup for the Steelers once again. I don't have a strong take on like either side, but I'm really, really concerned about the matchup for the Bengals.
For this matchup, obviously there's going to be implications for the Chargers-Raiders game on Sunday as well. So you're going to probably want to keep an eye on what's going on in Pittsburgh-Cincy, because we've seen this in Week 18 in the past before. That Chargers game will probably move in real time based off of what's happening with the Bengals and the Steelers. Now, earlier in the day, we have the Ravens hosting the Browns. The Ravens are 18.5 point favorites at FanDuel, up to 19 at some sharp books. It's been one-way money for Baltimore. We're getting news that Bailey Zappi is going to start this game for the Cleveland Browns. There's been no market movement here. I'm curious what you guys think about that, because for me, Zappi would be a pretty clear upgrade over DTR.
I mean, amazingly, the places that have moved the lines going towards Baltimore which kind of doesn't make sense to me. And I see a lot of I'm looking at an odds screen right now. I see a lot of shops pulled the game, which, I mean, why the hell are you pulling the game based off Bailey Zappi starting? I mean, this was known. Kevin Stefanski has went out publicly said that they're probably going to see both. We're probably going to see both quarterbacks in the game. So it really didn't surprise me, to be honest. And I don't know why the odds have gotten pulled at so many places. And I also don't know why Baltimore is taking money in some spots. Now, do I want to put myself betting on Cleveland and DTR again, especially after I had to live through that assuming DTR is going to play some in this game? Do I really put myself through it again after watching it for 60 minutes last week? Probably not. But I will say that I could see a path where in the second half, Baltimore is not running Lamar Jackson. Derrick Henry is out of the game for Keaton Mitchell or something like that. So probably forced lean would be Cleveland, but I doubt I end up getting involved in it.
Honestly, I might get involved in Cleveland today. I have to think about this a little bit more, and I actually have to this happened right as we were going on air, people, so I don't really have a manner in which to compare the two quarterbacks and run this game really quickly. But subjectively, I feel like DTR is a bottom 5 quarterback I've seen in the past 20 years in the NFL. I don't even know that it's necessarily debatable based off of his stats recently as well. So I think any sort of snaps in that game that are not DTR are beneficial to Cleveland. And then, as Hitman mentioned, I think there's a very valid point for, even if this game is completely out of hand, Baltimore potentially starting to pull starters in the fourth quarter, if that's the case, right? I mean, the end game, I know they have to win this game to secure the division, but if they're up 3 touchdowns midway through the fourth quarter, they're probably taking guys off the field as well. That's going to open up opportunities for Cleveland late in the game. So personally, I do see this as a valuable price on the Browns right now. Oh man, I can't even believe this. What week 18 will do to you. It's going to have to someone just take away my mobile phone and computer at some point today, please. DTR probably gets some snaps as well in the game, as Hitman alluded to, but any series that are not DTR, I would upgrade the Browns. They might actually be able to complete a forward pass, in my opinion. Sunday, we're going to group these into buckets, so to speak, as to make this a little bit easier to go on with the show. So I want to start with what I will call the must-win games. I mean, I don't know why I'm doing it in quotations. They are kind of must-win games for teams in the early window. So that's going to be Carolina, Atlanta, Tampa Bay, and New Orleans. Let's start with Carolina and Atlanta here, because I know we have a few more opinions on that game. Falcons at FanDuel right now, 7.5 minus 115. I played the over against Carolina last week. Totals in a similar range at 48.5 right now at FanDuel, juice towards the under. And that was a pretty bad state of defense for the Carolina Panthers in that game, where the Bucs just went over the total themselves. Hitman, you wanted to talk about the total in this game as well. What do you see in here, Panthers and Falcons?
Yeah, and just the latest that I read on the Browns game, by the way, is that Stefanski said that both quarterbacks will play. I don't know if it just ends up being a hot hand approach. Probably Zappi ends up with the hotter hand than DTR, you would think. But
hotter hand.
Yeah, but
a cold hand is still the hotter hand.
Whatever. Anyway, back to the Panthers Falcons game. I kind of lean towards the over again, or excuse me, for another week after you had it last week. I think that Hubbard being out for Carolina is going to increase the pass rate for Carolina, especially it's their last game, that maybe get another look at Bryce Young before going into a pretty big offseason, making a decision if they're going to draft a quarterback or not. They had a 43% neutral pass rate the previous 3 weeks with Hubbard in the lineup. The first game without him, they turned in 67% neutral pass rate against the Buccaneers last week. Atlanta also upped their pass rate in Penix's second game. In their first game against the Giants, they threw on only 48% of plays in situation neutral. It went up to 56% against Washington. Now, in a similar matchup, the Giants and the Panthers defense, I could see Atlanta maybe going back to the run a little bit like they did in the game against the Giants. But you're just going. I love when Rob always says, like, this team is not a real team. This team's not a real defense, or whatever. Like, the Carolina Panthers defense is just not real right now. They're decimated. They've been decimated with injuries all year. It's gotten worse with J.C. Horn and Josie Jewell. Without Horn last week, Mayfield just literally did whatever he wanted, absolutely torched them through the air. Their run defense has been the worst in the NFL, 32nd in EPA, 32nd in success rate this year. Their defense overall is 32nd in EPA, 32nd in success rate. Carolina gave up 550 yards and 50 points, or nearly 50 points, without those guys in the lineup. Atlanta's getting points. I'm very confident in that. It's just a matter if Carolina could hold their own. And I think that Carolina can in this matchup, especially if they do show a tendency without Hubbard to go a little bit pass heavier than they have in past weeks.
Yeah, Suma, I think you were looking at the similar handicap in this game as well.
Yeah, exactly. Hitman said it. I mean, when you look at who's starting for the Panthers right now, there are guys like Chandler Wooten and Jacoby Whitmer at linebacker, both former undrafted free agents. Free safety Demani Richardson, I think he was a undrafted free agent this year. Dane Jackson from a 7th round. There are really guys starting that would not start at, I think, basically any other team. And the run defense, it's not like it's been bad. It's been like historically bad. I'm just going through the last couple of games for the defense. I mean, their best outcome against Dallas, against the run, was a 0.04 EPA per play with a 55% success rate. Like, on the season, those would be like horrendous numbers, bottom of the barrel, and they are much worse than that when you look at a larger sample. So I expect the Falcons to get a lot of explosive plays here. I have some reservations about Michael Penix. I think that he still casually misses a lot of, or a few too many throws, but against this defense, I think that the Falcons should be able to run up the score. And then on the other side, the Falcons, I think they lead the league in sacks since week 13, but I think at least half of that I would describe it as fake. They had one strong overall performance against the Chargers, but other than that, they faced Desmond Ridder and Drew Lock, and they got torched by Jane Daniels and Sam Darnold. So Panthers pass protection has been really, really good this year. Bryce Young has been much better. I think the Panthers should also get their fair share of scoring. Agree with the over.
I love Ron Mexico warning me in the chat about the Browns. Just say no, Rob. I might have to listen to that advice, honestly. Atlanta's route to the playoffs is a Tampa Bay loss. Hitman, I don't want to disclose too much because obviously you run a paid service and people pay for the picks, but you sent out Saints earlier in the week, and that was at a different number. That was at 14. Market's at 13 right now in this game. But as the week has gone on, are there more reservations now with New Orleans based off of the way that the news has changed there?
Yeah, so the way I was looking at the Saints earlier in the week was at 14. It was kind of just more of a coin flippy to me. And any upside with the Saints getting guys back in Chris Olave, Derek Carr, and Alvin Kamara would speak. The line would go crazy. I mean, I would make the game under 10 if they got all those guys back. Now, I wasn't expecting all of them back, but I thought there was at least a possibility. Talking to some people, I thought that there was a chance it happened. Listening to some podcasts with some guys really plugged into the Saints, they were saying above 50% chance. Olave, Carr was probably closer to 50-50, and Kamara a little less than 50-50. Some of those same people that I listened to about that, a little bit more reservations now with it. If forced to pick, I'd probably lean the Carr doesn't end up coming back. I don't think Kamara ends up back. And Olave, despite full practicing, now he full practiced Wednesday, and I believe he got in some full practices last week, and there was a lot of talk about him coming back. I think that he's still maybe slightly up in the air still. So to be honest, at current market, which is a lot of 13.5s out there, some juiced 14s, I really don't have much of an opinion on it. I think that I'm probably going to end up there's probably going to end up being no Carr and some of these other guys for the Saints. So I don't like it at current market. Again, at 14, thought it was worth a shot. And think that it's a coin. That's probably the right number if those guys end up not playing.
I mean, listen, it's a week 18. We react to news. There was a non-zero chance that these guys would play. And sometimes you got to fire on that stuff.
And there's still, I mean, the head coach said that Derek Carr is going to play in a simulated game today or tomorrow to try to figure out if he's coming back. I mean, I don't think he is.
How hard is Rizzy trying to get a job there? Like, this is getting incredible at this point. Olave, like, history of concussions. They're working this guy out. Like, it's so ridiculous. I get it's a divisional game. You want to keep Tampa out of the playoffs. I get all that stuff. But at some point, you got to say enough is enough with the injuries, right? Like, it's absurd.
Yeah, I mean, I get he's a player's coach. Reportedly, like the players are the ones that are really pushing it. Alvin Kamara needs 50 yards to get to 1,000, and supposedly that's a big milestone in his mind. But yeah, I think it doesn't end up happening.
Mm-hmm. What is a simulated NFL game? I mean, they do this in baseball with simulated games. We simulate seasons. I used to do that at Prediction Machine back in the day. That's another. I mean, we could live in a simulation.
Yeah, supposedly from what Rizzy has said, it's just about taking the snaps with his left hand and doing the handoffs, all that stuff. But
yeah. Before we get into the rest of Sunday's slate, we're in the final week of the NFL season. Make sure you bet the NFL season on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, as Forward Progress gives you the edge during an otherwise hectic betting week. We're big fans of FanDuel. They have a really great offering, great product and market. Uptime is great. Tons of markets for you to bet into. For the very fan-friendly markets like anytime touchdown score, they have the lowest VIG across the board. They're offering all sorts of promotions week in and week out. And right now, all customers get profit boosts throughout week 18. That means you can pump up your gridiron winnings multiple times a week. FanDuel has tons of ways you can get in on the NFL action. You can bet money line, spreads, player props, and more. Plus, with super simple live betting, lightning fast bet settlement, and instant withdrawals, FanDuel makes betting on the NFL easier than ever before. Just visit FanDuel.com/forwardprogress to download FanDuel today. You must be 21 plus and present in select states, or 18 plus and present in DC. Opt-in required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable profit boost tokens. Restrictions apply, including token expiration. See terms for offers at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. All right, keeping it going with the early slate on Sunday. Let's get to games where starters are projected for at least one of the two teams. And let's start with the Cowboys hosting the Commanders here. Obviously, the Commanders playing for playoff positioning in the NFC. This game does matter to them. They can avoid the Philadelphia Eagles in round one. And we have a spreadsheet that we share before the show with our leans for the game, which I use going into this. And we were all going to be pretty heavy on Washington talking about this particular game. But in the last hour or so, caught some Washington steam in market all the way up to -6.5, -105. I watched Mike McCarthy's presser earlier today. Didn't give an update at all on the quarterback situation. All we know is that Cooper Rush has a $500K incentive in his contract for reaching 55% of the offensive snaps. He'd have to play 58 of 58 offensive snaps for the Cowboys this week or more than that, and he would get a $500K incentive. Aside from that, have no idea what the Cowboys are going to do here. Suma, I'm going to throw it over to you here first. Commanders and Cowboys, now that the line's ballooned to 6.5, do you still see value in Washington at that price?
Slightly. I mean, earlier when we talked about it, it was at -4.5. Right now, -6.5, soft -6.5 at FanDuel. I mean, this game back in, I don't know when it was, week 12 or whatever, close -10.5 at home for the Commanders. That was with CeeDee Lamb, without Jake Ferguson. Like you said, commies have all the incentives to play. Gotta avoid Eagles, could end up playing at Tampa Bay, for example. And yeah, I think that the commies offense should absolutely score. And then I think that Cooper Rush overall played pretty decently and probably played above my personal expectation overall. But no CeeDee Lamb. He's getting the ball out really, really quick. So it was like the perfect storm in some of these games. And Mike McCarthy does not answer the question, but I mean, reporters have been asking him whether Trey Lance might play. He simply does not answer it. I mean, you spent a 4th-round pick on that guy. Like, if you don't even play him in like a meaningless, quote unquote, week 18 game, I mean, they cannot really spoil anything on Washington other than a playoff seeding position. But if you do not play him this week, I mean, what's the point overall? Regarding the incentives, some teams in the past have been paying these out anyway, even if the players were like close of not getting it. So not sure whether they put too much stock on that, but I still think there's a small chance we might see Trey Lance this week. And that, I mean, at least in my opinion, would be a downgrade from what Cooper Rush has been showing. I don't think we will get the quick game. I think Cooper Rush has the second quickest time to throw after Tua Tagovailoa this season, and I don't think we will get this from Trey Lance. He will probably hold the ball too long, eat more sacks, and yeah, clearly a downgrade, I think.
Cottage says, why wouldn't they start Lance? Seems bizarre. What's even more bizarre is that McCarthy's going through this entire week, like not giving any information. It's week 18. I don't want to call it a meaningless game of it, but they can't even really play spoiler for Washington. Like, Washington's in. I don't really understand what McCarthy is doing here. Hitman, what do you make of the current situation there?
I kind of lean towards Washington when it was under 6. It took money today. I just think that now it's accounted for, that there's a decent chance that we are going to get Trey Lance in the game. I was kind of wondering also, like, if there was any talk about if maybe Parsons doesn't play the whole game. I don't know if you've seen anything about that, but yeah, with the line move that happened, not much of an opinion. I think Suma just put it perfectly.
Yeah, I would play this number if I knew Trey Lance was going to play the full game, but we're working with imperfect information here.
Yeah, and then it's a matter of, like, do you really want to do that to Cooper Rush? Like, if he's just short of that incentive, like, does it piss people off in the locker room that the guy that gives you the best chance to win got pulled out of the game to avoid giving him an incentive? Like,
it's tricky. Lots of teams have paid the incentives anyways. Some teams will just do that regardless. So I could see a scenario where they say, hey, we're going with Trey Lance, but we're still going to pay this out for you, because there's that matters for free agency a lot in the NFL nowadays as well, how teams handle that late in the year with the incentives as part of the contract. You looked a little surprised, Hitman, when I brought up that incentive. I don't know if you didn't read it in Sal Vitri's thread this week or anything like that. I don't know if you caught that or not.
Don't get me started. Don't get me started.
Other games this week in the same territory. Starters projected for the playoff team. Chicago, Green Bay. Obviously, there could be scenarios here where the Packers, depending on what's going on in the Commanders game, could opt to take players out. Green Bay, -10.5, -105, 41.5. What are your thoughts here, Hitman?
I think it's a good example of a game where derivatives and live betting could possibly be beneficial. Green Bay first half may be worth a look. Chicago's offense is bottom 5 on the season in first half points. They're second worst in first quarter points. They're one of 3 teams to not have an opening drive touchdown this year. They've just been really poor to start games, and Green Bay is far from a lock to do it, but sometimes they do take the ball. You would think that there is motivation for this team to get up early and rest in the second half. And then for live betting purposes, the second half, depending what's happening with the Washington game, if Washington is blowing out Dallas, Green Bay potentially not as motivated in the second half. I doubt that Josh Jacobs gets a monster workload. Could be some looks on under or Chicago if we did end up getting a situation where Malik Willis was coming in this game. So Don't have a play right now on it, but just some thoughts that I'm monitoring on it.
Yeah. I will point out for those who have a FanDuel account, which you should at this point, 41.5 at FanDuel, whereas the rest of the market is painted 41 right now. So if you like the under, that would be your spot. Minus 115. Obviously, I want to present the VIG in that scenario as well, but that's best case scenario on the under in market. The other game that falls into this category is Houston and Tennessee, which saw some interesting line movement, so to speak. Obviously, Steve Fezzik tweeted publicly about giving out play on Tennessee earlier in the week, bet it out to minus 160. That was obviously with the thought that Houston has nothing to play for in this game. Why would they play starters? D'Amico Ryans has said that he will play his starters in this game. We don't know until what point, but they're going to use this as a game to get ready for the playoffs. Hitman or Suma, any thoughts here? Houston, Tennessee, and maybe I'll go to you here, Suma. Is there anything to do with the price where it's at right now?
I still slightly lean towards Tennessee because I think that, let's just say the Texans would play their starters all game long, then we gotta think like, what would the potential spread be? I think the Texans offense has been so bad this year. When you look at their season-long metrics and adjust for schedule, it's not like they are really in front of Tennessee overall. I still think that Tennessee, they did it a few weeks back, would give the Texans, regardless of the spread now, a good game overall. And then I really wonder how long D'Amico will play all his starters. I mean, you cannot pull all the starters. You can all just pull a handful of starters. So I mean, it would be so stupid for them to let their starters play like all time. I mean, just imagine the backlash you would get if I don't know, Stroud gets an injury in the third quarter or something. I mean, it would simply be so incredibly stupid. So I have to assume maybe he wants to give all the starters, I don't know, like 1 or 2 quarters, but I just don't think they will play the full game. And then I think Titans are absolutely live in this one.
All right, let's go to the early windows. I'll call them meaningless games. They're not meaningless. They have draft implications, obviously, but we got teams that don't have things to play for here. Buffalo and New England. The Bills are small favorites on the road, laying 2.5 minus 105. Hitman, you had some thoughts on what to do with Bills and Patriots potentially here.
Just think that there's a legit chance that we are going to see Joe Milton play in this game for the Patriots. There was the quotes coming out saying how May would start if he's healthy. Showed up limited on the injury report. The latest reports are saying, I believe Alex Van Pelt said that Drake May is going to start. But the fact that Milton's getting first-team reps in practice, it just would not surprise me if he did end up getting playing time in this game. And if he does get playing time in this game, there's going to be opportunities, in my opinion, to fade New England, because I just don't believe that this guy is a real NFL quarterback, and he is obviously a massive downgrade to Drake May. So there's also some talk from Sean McDermott about like if Mike White could end up playing in this game for Buffalo. Probably, I don't believe he ends up playing. I probably think it ends up being Trubisky for the entire game. The talk about Josh Allen, like, does he play a some people speculated, is it a drive, 2 drives, a quarter? I wouldn't be surprised with the way McDermott worded it, saying he emphasized he's going to play a very, very short time. I wouldn't be surprised if it was just 1 snap to be out, 1 handoff, and they took Allen out in this game. Obviously, that's priced in that it's going to be a Trubisky game, but I still think that there's a little bit of hidden upside in this game with how much does Joe Milton end up playing for the Patriots.
Yeah, those that don't know about Josh Allen, he takes pride in his Iron Man streak that he's got going on. So it could easily be 1 snap. And I think
he's only like 200 starts short of the real Iron Man streak. So got to keep it going. Your boy answered to a lot of trivia questions as well. The other game is Jacksonville, Indianapolis. Obviously, the Colts got eliminated last week, losing to the Giants. Looking at the betting market here,
at FanDuel. The Colts are 4.5-point favorites. Totals 43.5. I find this one pretty interesting because Shane Steichen has said that if Anthony Richardson is healthy, he will start. The reports on Anthony Richardson were he couldn't get up off the floor last week. He was crawling around because he had so much lower back pain. He had a slip disc. I just don't see how they're going to turn around and start a young quarterback here with the potential of injury. That leaves Joe Flacco and Sam Ehlinger on the roster. Ehlinger's 26 years old. We've seen him. He's not very good. He was a 6th-round pick out of Texas. I don't know that he's going to get any snaps in this game. I would say probabilistically speaking, I think it'll be mostly Flacco here, especially since Steichen might be coaching for his job, which I think is kind of ridiculous. But I am staying tuned for that to kind of see if there is any update on that situation, because playing a 40-year quarterback on an expiring contract late in the year doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to me. I would think it would be completely different if the Colts really had a young QB on their roster that could get some snaps. They don't, but it's just something that I'm keeping my eye on here with Jacksonville, Indianapolis. I don't think there's much else to do here, in my opinion, until we know what's going on a little bit more. Late games, the big game is Kansas City and Denver. This is the one where Denver clinches if they're in. If not, there's possibilities that open things up for Cincinnati, for Miami as well. Denver, since open, it's been all one-way money, as Kansas City is going to start Carson Wentz and likely play backups for a lot of this game. Denver out to -10.5, -105, total 39.5. Juice towards the over at FanDuel. That's the lowest number I've seen in market. The rest of the market painted 40 right now. Hitman, KC, Denver thoughts. What's going on with this game?
A little bit of interest in Kansas City. Denver doesn't really strike me as a team built to win by margin, even going against the backups. I mean, Denver's offense has been struggling as of late. Since week 13, only the Giants have gone 3 and out on a higher percentage of possessions than this Broncos offense. For the Chiefs, you can't rest everyone. They're probably a team that I consider to have above average depth as well. They aren't like some of these, like, for example, like the Rams from years past, where they had just all-star players and absolutely no depth. Carson Wentz is a capable and a high variance quarterback. But my biggest concern is just the talk that Kansas City ends up playing their third-string quarterback. Is it Chris Oludekon, I believe is how you pronounce it, at some point in the game, which kind of sours me on betting Kansas City. Possibly a first-half play, which is when you know that Carson Wentz is going to be in the game for the Chiefs. But Kansas City possibly going to the third-string quarterback at some point in this game probably is what ends up keeping me off betting them for the full game.
Yeah, historically speaking, late in the season, week 18 especially, these teams that have quote-unquote nothing to play for against the must-win teams have historically done very well against the spread. Now, that's not to say that's predictive of the future going forwards, but it's easy to see why. Denver's in a price range where they would almost never find themselves in this particular game. And maybe if Kansas City does play exclusively backups for most of the game, third string quarterback, whatever, then you can justify the price. But there's lots of instances where that doesn't necessarily happen. And I do believe that there's a pressure aspect on some of these teams in the final week of the season as well. Sean Payton has been coaching not to lose for a little bit now. I do believe he'll be a guy that takes field goals in this type of game against a backup quarterback, and I think that would impact the number as well. So I have a pretty strong lean to KC. I'm just kind of seeing how far this can possibly get before I get involved here. It won't be a big bet by any stretch of the imagination. This is educated guesswork on my end as well. But yeah, strong lean to KC. I'm on that train.
Even if Carson Wentz was starting too, like the back door is always open with a guy like him, but it just concerns me. Like if they did get down 17 in this game and they end up pulling Wentz and putting Oludekon in the game, like you're almost drawing dead at that point. So
totally agree. Lots of things can happen in week 17. In the late games that quote unquote could matter, we have the Chargers and Raiders, we have the Seahawks and Rams. And I'm talking about could matter in terms of positioning in the playoffs. So Chargers, Raiders, I'll take this one. I think it's very dependent, obviously, on what's going to go on with Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, because the Chargers might find themselves locked into the 6th seed when this game is starting, or they might be playing for something. And what catches my interest is the total in this game. I've run every permutation of what I think could happen. I personally think that Chargers over 40.5 minus 115, the total in this game, is a valuable bet right now, but I don't think it's necessarily worth clicking it because you can click it live during the Steelers game in some capacity. I do, however, think that no matter what happens, you will be live on this total because Chargers backup to Justin Herbert is Taylor Heineke, who's a decent, thrower of the ball. It's not like you're going to a complete unknown backup type of situation. I also do think that there's a non-zero chance that Harbaugh still goes with starters for a period of this game. He is a motivational guy. Justin Herbert has historically played through tons of injuries before. He's not a guy that likes to sit down and take a week off. So I think there's some non-zero chances of starters playing. On the Raiders side, I like the offense with AOC right now. They're moving the ball a lot better. They do have playmakers on the outside with Jacoby Myers. Trey Tucker's even played well. Brock Bowers, obviously, the amount of catches he's made and the difference he's made for that offense. Neither of these teams boasts a great pass rush at the moment. And, you do have the potential, again, with the Chargers taking their elite pass rushers out of the game in this instance, which would open things up a little bit more for the Raiders offense. So I'm very much eyeing the over in this game. I do think market timing is extremely important. So those are just my thoughts. Do with that what you will. You can attack that game however you want. We have Seattle and the Rams as well, which I was doing the Sunday night show with Clive, and we talked about grabbing Seattle at +3 in this game. They're all the way out to -6.5. So I know in some capacity, all three of us are on Seattle. And what I want to talk about here is when, if ever, do we consider buying back with the Rams in any capacity? Because the Rams are going to start Jimmy Garoppolo in this game. Sean McVay has been known to, he doesn't really care. He'd rather use this as a bye week, so to speak, which is his decision, and not improve their playoff positioning in any sense. But I'll go to you here, Suma. What Seattle and LA, what's going to be the resistance point in this game? Have we hit it, or does it still have room to go?
I gotta believe there's going to be resistance if it goes towards 7. I think if you wanted to have some buyback and maybe you see it starting to move towards 6, you might try to grab a few stale 6.5s, because I would be surprised if this skyrockets towards through 7 here. I mean, we talked about it. You cannot rest everyone. I mean, we are not talking about the Pats offense all of a sudden going towards their backup quarterback. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo, still a capable quarterback, still a sound scheme. They cannot rest everyone. They will likely, aside from Stafford, rest, I don't know, Kyle Williams, Nakua, Carp, Havenstein, maybe a few starters on defense like Jared Verves, Baron Young, Turner, but there are still going to be a few players in a sound McVay called offense, and there's still some positive variance. So I would be surprised if this crosses 7, honestly.
Hitman, I know you're involved in Seattle as well. Any consideration to trying to middle this game?
Probably not. I mean, I'm not going to try to middle just to middle. I have to think that the side that I'm middling with is plus EV. And I don't know. It's very subjective on what you think about this game I don't got much of an opinion. Maybe if it gets to 7, I could see that ends up being the resistance point, but 6.5, probably end up leaving it alone.
Yeah, so there's some commentary in the chat about this game and the permutations in the NFC based off it. So Rams, XF says Rams are still incentivized to win, which is true because they're playing for the 3 seed. However, the coaching style of McVay leads me to believe that he doesn't care all that much. They're going to host a home game, basically. I mean, does anyone disagree with that?
I mean, they're going to call the game to, obviously they're going to call the game to win. And he's going to do, I think McVay's going to, without showing too much, is going to put together his best possible game plan to win the game, because obviously you'd rather be the 3 seed than be the 4 seed. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. There was also some talk, which from difficult, Tampa Bay is going to be the 3 seed unless something weird happens. Why are they 14-1 in the NFC? So if Tampa wins and the Rams lose this game, the Rams do drop to the 4 seed and Tampa does get the 3 seed. They avoid the Detroit-Minnesota matchup and likely get Washington, which would change the permutations in the NFC as well. I do agree. I saw 13-1 this morning. I don't know, maybe there's 14-1 out there. I honestly didn't look too hard about it, but I do think Tampa is probably the best, like, non-favorite bet in either the AFC or the NFC now. Like, if I had to pick one team to make a run, I think it would be the Bucs.
Great price, 14-1. Honestly, I mean, that offense absolutely legit. Let's say they face Washington, the Eagles. I mean, Hurts, I think he will be out of the concussion protocol, obviously, but Todd Bowles has had good game plans against Hurts in the past. So, I mean, if that offense is clicking at the right time right now, Liam Cohen should be a top 5 OC. I mean, there are worse bets you could make, honestly.
Yep. Speaking of worse bets you can make, we have one more game in the late window. It's the Jets and the Dolphins. And I haven't made, I mean, if I was to chalk up my season to worst bets I've made, I think probably 3 of the 5 have been on the Jets at some point this year. Market likes the Jets this week relative to the opener. Jets now 1.5 point dogs at home, -102 in the money line at FanDuel, taking on the Miami Dolphins. Seems like Snoop Huntley is going to start for the Miami Dolphins in this game. Looks like Aaron Rodgers potentially last NFL start as well. Injuries on the O-line for both teams. Teron Armstead status up in the air. Morgan Moses status up in the air as well. Suma, you're the resident Jets guy. Any feeling on Jets Dolphins in the late window this week?
Sorry, small lean towards the Jets here. We got to figure out their O-line situation, but that situation is not great for the Dolphins either, with Teron Armstead getting another knee injury last week. I mean, could you imagine Aaron Rodgers potentially leaving his NFL career with a loss to Snoop Huntley? I mean, how ridiculous would that be? I mean, Huntley, I think Tua really still got the most out of this offense, but I mean, Huntley, I still just don't trust that offense. They scored on, like, I don't know, 3 short fields against Cleveland last week because they faced the absolute worst quarterback in football right now. I think Jets should be live here.
Yeah, it's I'm in the same boat just from a numbers perspective. Directionally, I show value on the Jets this week. It's just one of those, it's what am I doing here at this point? Are there better things to do in life? Hitman, go ahead.
I almost never say this about teams, but the Jets I'm really concerned that they're just a dead team with it being the last week of the season, and the players are talking about effort, and Garrett Wilson supposedly hates Aaron Rodgers, and just some of the stuff that's been on social media. It's the rare case that I do think that the Jets just could be dead.
I would almost, this is going to sound dumb to some people. Morgan Moses injury is pretty interesting for the Jets because tackle situation has been a real problem for them. Obviously, they lost Tyron Smith and Olu Fashanu at left tackle for the year as well. But Tyrod is the backup there for the Jets, right? And I would almost like Tyrod a bit better behind this O-line than I do Aaron Rodgers right now, just with the lack of mobility. And that's the one thing that Huntley has going for him with Miami, relatively speaking. They missed their left tackle. He's younger, a little bit more mobile. But listen, there's a lot of games we could bet this week. There's going to be a few more in the playoffs as well. I probably don't end up with anything here. Sunday Night Football, we'll end off on this before we get into our best bets. And this is a game. I'm live on air for this one. It's our live watch along, which we do every Sunday night here on Forward Progress. And it's a good one. It's the Vikings at the Lions. Number 1 seed in the NFC is up for grabs. Loser will get the 5 seed in this game. Lions -2.5, -120 in market right now at FanDuel. There are some 3s out there. Most of the market, though, -2.5, heavily juiced at this point. I think the universe is aligning with us 3 on this one. But Hitman, I'm going to start with you. Vikings, Detroit. What do you like in here?
I like the Vikings. The Lions' pass defense, as some people would say, is just unserious. Caleb Williams threw for 334 yards against this pass defense. He literally couldn't even function against the Seahawks the next week. Brock Purdy and Josh Dobbs, behind a decimated offensive line, threw for over 400 yards against this pass defense. Buffalo had 8.2 yards per play and 560 yards of offense. Since week 13, when a lot of these injuries just continued to add up, this is the last ranked defense in the NFL in EPA per play. It's just as simple as this, that it's just a more complete Vikings team where I could theoretically see a good Vikings defense getting stops against the Lions offense. Like, the Lions offense has the upper hand for sure, but I theoretically can see a world where Minnesota does get some stops, and on the other side of the ball, it's just hard to see the Lions getting any stops. The two stops that they had against San Francisco were on Purdy interceptions, where the ball was literally almost thrown right to the defenders. I think Minnesota is still a little bit undervalued based off the narrative that Darnold's going to come back to earth. It's been a full season now of MVP candidate type quarterback play. And I just think that Detroit is still a tad bit inflated based off year-to-date stats, but it's just not the same team. And I don't think it's sustainable to keep doing what they're doing with their defensive personnel right now, and just having to play absolutely perfect games on offense every single game.
Yeah, Suma, let's get a non-homer take from you here. Obviously, Hitman, a huge Vikings fan. He's got the bring it home sign in the background of his screen there, making a case for the Vikings in the most important game of the season. Naturally, he would as a Vikings fan. But from a non-Vikings fan, Suma, thoughts on the game, Minnesota-Detroit?
Yeah, I agree with Hitman. The biggest point for me really is like that it's being a little bit more anti-Lions. Teams don't blitz the Vikings very often because you leave like Justin Jefferson on islands. Donald has been really good against the blitz in terms of success rate and EPA per play. And the Lions right now, they don't have a strong pass rush. They like to play man-to-man. They like to call a lot of blitzes recently. I think they had like a 45% blitz rate against Brock Purdy or something. And I just don't see what their strategy is going to be against this Vikings offense, because the Vikings will beat man. They will beat the blitz. So what is the Lions strategy going to be? I just don't know. I think that the Lions are probably going to have success against the run. Vikings run game has not been great over the past half of the season, but I still think that the Vikings should get enough going through the air. And on the other side, hard to get in front of this Lions offense train, but I think if there is a defense or ADC that can get I don't know, 2 or 3 or 4 stops a game, this might be Brian Flores' first game. The Vikings held them to a rushing success rate of, I think, 25 or 26%. They really just had that one big Gibbs run, but everything else was Goff from the pocket, and I think the Vikings will be able to throw some change-ups against him this time and maybe get one more key stop than the other side.
All right, let's get into our best bets for this week. I'm going to lead it off first because I won my pick last week, and I'm going to stick with the game that we just talked about. I'm taking the Vikings money line plus 130 as my best bet this week. I think this game should be much closer to a coin flip than it's being priced right now. I've talked about this for a while. I've avoided the Lions games the past couple weeks against the Bears and the 49ers because I didn't think that those were the opponents that were really going to take advantage of this bad defense. The 49ers really did. They just unfortunately gave the game away with a couple Brock Purdy interceptions that were unforced errors directly into the hands of receivers. But aside from that, I watched the game. I watched the 49ers move the ball effortlessly at will. And I think the Vikings will be able to do that in this game. Obviously, there's lots of things that can happen. This is a primetime game in Detroit. It's going to be loud. Place is going to be rocking. Darnold is prone to mistakes. I'm very much aware of that. but I do like the opportunity for the Vikings to be able to move the ball consistently on a very bad and beat up defense that simply does not have the corners or the defensive players to cover anyone really on the Minnesota side. That's the difference in market for me right now. I think that I just really like the Minnesota offensive matchup in this particular game. I'm going plus 130 on the money line. That's pretty widely available. Hitman, by virtue of not being here last week, you didn't lose. That means you get to go second here. What's it going to be and why?
New England Buffalo under 38.5 minus 115. I think that there's a real chance that we're seeing Joe Milton in this game. Now, is it a quarter, 2 quarters, 3 quarters? I don't know. But if we are seeing Milton for 2 quarters, let's say, I just think that this total should be closer to what we're getting in the Houston Titans game, which is 36.5. 37. Joe Milton, obviously, the talk is that he's getting first team reps. I don't think that you do that with a guy that you're planning on not playing in the game. McDermott has been talking about how he's looking to see players who haven't been active yet this season play in a game. The game just has a lot of preseason-esque vibes for me, with both teams lacking motivation to be aggressive offensively. Buffalo just trying to get out healthy for next week. New England making roster decisions based off getting the first pick. I think this total is just still a little bit too high.
All right, Hitman going with the total. Listen, you can bet any game on the board. Might not be motivation for either team, but under spot, Bills and Patriots. Suma, I genuinely have no idea where you're going with this one. I know you haven't been a huge fan of the board this week. I'll turn it over to you here. What's it going to be for the best bet this week?
Yeah, going with the Jacksonville Jaguars plus 4.5 minus 106 at FanDuel right now. Small edge numbers wise, and subjectively, I can't get over the Colts being a complete train wreck internally right now. I've read a story today about how bad the whole Anthony Richardson situation was with players calling him out. I don't know whether Shane Steichen might actually be coaching for his job. Maybe Chris Ballard might lose his job this offseason. I just think that the situation is extremely bad right now, and I feel like when I watch the Jaguars playing, I feel like subjectively, I really can get like a close to 100% mental performance, and I'm not sure whether I'm getting this with the Colts this week. Defense had a total collapse last week. Malik Neighbors completely torched them from like situations where he was not supposed to score. So really a complete disaster. Anthony Richardson DNP again today, so it's very likely going to be Flacco again offers some variance towards a turnover. So I'm liking the Jags here.
All right, Suma going with the Jags. So we got Vikings money line, Bills under, Jags as the 3 best bets. That's a wrap for our NFL Week 18 best bets. Thank you for spending part of your Thursday with us. We do appreciate everyone who tuned in live and was in the chat over the course of the show. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to hit the like button on YouTube. Subscribe here to Forward Progress as well. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts after the fact, please leave us a 5-star review. That means the world to us. It helps us grow the audience. Hitman was with us today. His prop bets have been fire this season. I hate to promote Hitman. You know how much I hate to do that. But check out his Saturday show here dropping on Forward Progress. It's been a great year for the prop bets there. And don't forget, you can join me Sunday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern time for Pizza Buffet. I'll cover everything you need heading into the games. You can stick around later in the night as well for a live watch along of Lions Vikings on Sunday Night Football. It's going to be a great way to close out the regular season. And of course, Happy New Year to everyone. Let's kick off 2025 with a bang. Drop your Super Bowl matchup prediction in the comments below. If you nail it, you're entered in a draw to win some exclusive Hammer merchandise that we got coming in 2025. Your Super Bowl matchup prediction. If you hit it, we'll send you a swag bag. For myself, Rob Pizzola, Hitman, Suma, our producer, Jason Cooper behind the scenes. Thanks for riding with us all season long. Best of luck with your bets this week. Bet responsibly. We'll see you next time. Peace out.